Welcome back to StartPack. With my 25 years of development experience, here at StartPack, we turn beginners into full-stack developers in as little as 3 months. Today, we're diving into the basics of C#, a versatile and powerful programming language that's essential for any developer's toolkit. Whether you're just starting out or looking to refresh your skills, this video will guide you through the core concepts you need to know. From understanding some basics, we'll cover a little bit around, so stick around and we'll dive in today. All right, we're going to go ahead and just jump right into some code. So a lot of these start very basic with some of the basics of C#. So if you're a more advanced developer, this may not be the video for you. I do have tons of other videos, so make sure to check out the other videos. I'll usually throw a link up here, or just check out the channel. And if you know anybody who is learning, we'd love to teach software developers, so make sure to get a hold of them and let them know. And you can share this video with them. So today we're going to be diving into some of the basics of C#. C# is an amazing language. It's been around for almost 25 years now. And we're going to dive into some of the syntax and get you running on some of your first programs. So, and as always, make sure you leave a comment down below. Tell me whether you like the video or not, because I try to bring you valuable content. And then also make sure that you like and subscribe to the channel, because I do bring you a lot of content. Also, down in the links down below, I give you a lot of different code samples. So this is hundreds of different code samples. Make sure you pull down the GitHub repository, because we have lots of different code samples. All right, we're going to dive into this one. So very first program is your good old-fashioned hello world. If you're going to start, always got to start here. So we start with a very basic hello world, where we can start with just a simple console output. So if you were to take this and just put it into the program.cs and run it, you would get a console, in your console application, you would just get a very simple hello world. And so some of the breakdown here is we have the public class hello world, you have your public static main, and so if you're running the program.cs and with pretty much all .NET projects, you're going to start with the main class. It's going to pass in some arguments here, and then you're going to just write out to the world. So very simple place to start. Now, we're going to talk about some of the very basics of data types. So you have your integer data types, where you can get your value types of integer data types, char for your characters, float, and then we also have a reference data type as a string, and then also you can look at it as a reference data type as these classes. So these classes are going to give, a class is going to create a person object, which is a reference data type. So you can see the usage of it here, where we declare person, and this is kind of a bad example because you usually don't want to name your object the same thing, even though it's one's uppercase, one's lowercase. And in C#, it is case sensitive. And so we have a person object here, and then we have the first name and the last name. Now, and so this is now in C#, one of the usual things we do is we'll do var. And if you see this var keyword, the compiler is actually going to compile this down to a person object. So in these kind of cases, it's actually generally preferred and taught as a best practice to use var, because usually the compiler is going to be even smarter than we are. Sometimes for readability, if you're calling another method, you might do this, where if I have some method that we're going to run on this half of the equation, then we can run against that. And then lastly, one of the last of the reference types is an array here. So we've got an integer array that's denoted by these square brackets. And then in this case, we're going to have the values of the array. So we could also, since there's 5 of these, we could also do this, and the compiler would actually do that as well and allocate 5 spots. So we could actually declare the array like this and then assign it to it, or we can just actually create the array at the same time, and the compiler will automatically count these. All right, so let's talk a little bit about variables here next. So we can see that we have these variables, and a variable is a placeholder that can tell the memory to give it a name. So I used to be told when I was very first learning a program, it's kind of like a mailbox, right? We're going to give an integer level size mailbox called age and give it the number 30. So this is where we can tell the memory to store the value 30 into a memory location called age. Now next, we take the name John, and this is a string value, and we created a variable called John. We then have a double of pi, and this is a floating point. A double is a floating point type numbers. And then we have the Boolean, which can only be true or false, right? There's also nullable Booleans if we do that, but we won't get too far ahead of ourselves. In general, a Boolean either needs to be true or false. If I try to give this any other value like 1, the compiler will get cranky about it. In C Sharp and using VS Code and Visual Studio, you'll see that if you toggle off in a lot of cases, the IntelliSense will give you a warning. All right, now, like I said before, we generally like to try to use the keyword var. The keyword var allows the compiler to decide what type of memory or what type of a variable or placeholder that we need to be able to be using for this. And so the var keyword, the compiler can replace and infer to this that it's a string, whereas here it can infer to this that it's an integer. So you could go through all of these and replace them with var, and it would know what to do with them. And so you can see that it's happy with those. And generally speaking, our best practices, we try to use var. A lot of times, like I said, if we're using a method or something on this side that we're not sure what type it returns, you can use the value type so that you can know. But otherwise, I try to stick with var in general, and you'll see most C# developers do nowadays, unless you're looking at some really old code. var came along, can't remember exactly which version of C#, but it wasn't always there, so var was something new to C# at one point. All right, let's talk a little bit about constants. So a constant is something that can never change. So for instance, your gravitational pull is a constant that's not going to change. These are immutable values. Now, a company name is very unlikely to change. So you could probably still use this as a constant, even if the company were to be bought or whatever. Then these are pretty. You'd have to deploy in order to be able to make these changes. All right, let's jump into some conditional statements. So we set a variable here to int of age is equal to 20. If age is greater than 18, then we'd write, hey, you can be eligible to vote. If not, then you'd say you're not eligible to vote. We can also do something very similar with a switch statement, right? Where we have switch, and then we see the different switch examples here. And so in this case, if we were going to do a switch statement, we would switch on a value here and do it this way. So lots of different ways you can do conditionals. We get into lots of different conditionals over time. And here at the Startup Hack, we do love to teach software developers. And so make sure you like and subscribe to the channel because we try to bring you guys good information. All right, let's go into loops now. So a loop executes code repeatedly, right? In this case, it's going to declare the variable I and set it equal to 1. Then while I is less than or equal to 5, it's going to continue to loop. And then at the completion of each iteration of the loop, it will then increment I by 1. So this will increment it. So in this case, this would print out 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Whereas if we had just less than, it would just print out to 4. We also have for each, which will iterate over items in a collection. So let's say that the collection was a collection of items here. Then in each of these, it would iterate over those and do something similar. We also have our while loops, which loop while a condition is true. Then we also have our do while loop, where it does a condition and then checks the while loop. So the difference between the while loop and the do while loop is the while loop checks before it iterates over it, whereas the do while loop iterates once and then checks the condition at the end. All right, so that's our conditional statements, our loops. Next, we're going to dive into an array. So pretty much every programming language out there has arrays, and C# is no different. You won't see arrays used a ton because of this next one that we see down here, but they're good to understand here. So in this case, we have a string array denoted by these square brackets. Then we declare the values of Alice, Bob, and Charlie, which are going into that string array. This would then write, and if we say this, we're reaching the index of 1. So we're going to get the item out of index number 1. So again, think of these kind of like slots in a mailbox, right? So you're going to grab slot number 1, which in this case is going to grab Bob. As with everything with programming, we start with a 0 base indexed. And this sometimes catches a lot of people, and it's kind of something you'll see developers will understand, but others may not as much. So this is index 0, this would be index 1, and this would be index 2. So if you tried to do 3, this would actually give a runtime error because, actually it may even hit a compile time error, but it would give an error saying that that it's out of bounds, that you were indexed out of bounds, and we never want to be out of bounds. All right, last but not least here, let's talk a little bit about lists. So we talked a little bit above about like a for each, this for each loop and how it can loop over a set of collections. Lists are very popular inside of C Sharp. And so we would say in this case, we have a list of numbers. You can then add 1, 2, 3. And as you loop over each of these, it'll loop over each and create a var of number in the numbers collection and then write out each of these numbers. So we would see 1, 2, and 3. So this has been very basic C Sharp. So if you're just getting started, this is really good. Just get your feet wet. Again, if you're this basic right now, I definitely recommend reaching out to us here at Startup Hack. We love training software developers, and we take you from zero to intern level within 3 months. So make sure you check that out, but also make sure that even if you're a more experienced developer, that you like and subscribe to the channel. We bring a lot of more advanced concepts here onto the channel, and I love to teach software developers. So make sure that you check out our channel, and let me know if you think that I did something wrong here, or you think that the video is silly, or you disagree with something. I respond to every one of the comments on the channel, so make sure that you leave a comment, and we will catch you guys next time. Make sure you like and subscribe to the channel because we bring you lots of great tutorials and tips that every developer should know. See you next time.